There are moments in life when God takes you into a quiet season, not to punish you, but to prepare you. A season where the phone stops ringing, friends disappear, and opportunities dry up. It's not because you've done something wrong, it's because God is working something right within you. You see, not every battle you fight needs an audience, and not every wound should be displayed. Some of your most defining victories will happen when no one is watching. Your private battles are the forge where your public strength is born. It's in those unseen hours of prayer, in those lonely nights of tears, in those mornings when you rise even though everything in you wants to quit. That's where God is shaping who you are. We live in a world that celebrates exposure. People post their pain, broadcast their struggles, and seek comfort in validation. But what they often lose in the process is the sacred intimacy between their struggle and their Savior. When you share too soon what God is still working on, you risk letting human opinions contaminate divine work. The world might misunderstand your process, but God never does. He doesn't need applause to begin His transformation in you. He doesn't need a witness to justify your growth. God works in silence because real change doesn't need noise. Think about the seed in the soil. It starts in darkness, buried and unseen. But down there, beneath the dirt, life is taking shape. Roots are forming, foundations are being set. If you dig it up too soon just to show progress, you kill its potential. The same is true for your struggles. God plants you in moments of obscurity, not to bury you, but to build you. That loneliness, that heartbreak, that disappointment, it's not the end. It's the beginning of your strength taking root. Every tear you've cried in private is watering the soil of your future. Every silent prayer is a step toward your purpose. And when the time is right, when the roots are deep enough, you'll break through the surface stronger than you've ever been. When you keep your struggles private, you allow God to be your confidant. You stop looking for comfort from people who cannot carry the weight of your pain. Not everyone deserves access to your wounds, because not everyone has the wisdom to handle them. Some people will use your pain as entertainment, others as judgment, but God uses it as construction material. He is building something solid within you, something that cannot be shaken by gossip or criticism. The moment you choose privacy, you choose intimacy with God. You allow Him to be your strength when your own voice is tired of explaining. It's in private battles that real warriors are made. Public victories are easy to celebrate, but private pain, that's where true faith is tested. When nobody sees you on your knees, crying out for strength, and yet you get up the next morning and keep going, that's power. When you forgive someone who doesn't even know the damage they caused, that's victory. When you resist the urge to respond, to explain, to prove yourself, that's strength. You don't need the world to see your pain for God to bless your process. He said in His word, "Your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you openly." That means every quiet tear, every unseen prayer, every act of obedience when no one is watching. It's all seen by the one who matters most. Sometimes the silence of your struggle feels unbearable. You wonder if God even hears you. You feel forgotten, abandoned, and overlooked. But the silence isn't a sign of absence, it's a sign of preparation. When God is silent, He's not ignoring you. He's arranging things for your breakthrough. A builder doesn't talk while he's laying the foundation, he just works. And that's what God is doing in your life. He's laying the foundation for something that won't crumble when the storms come. He's teaching you to depend on Him alone, to find your validation not in people, but in purpose. Remember, even Jesus had private struggles. In Gethsemane, He prayed alone. He didn't broadcast His anguish. He went before His Father in secret. That moment of isolation was where His obedience was perfected. The same is true for you. There are crosses you must carry in silence, not because God wants you to suffer, but because He wants you to surrender. He's stripping away the need for approval, teaching you to draw strength from Him alone. Every hidden struggle is an invitation to grow closer to God. It's His way of saying, "Let me handle what they don't understand." Oh, your private battles build endurance. They teach you patience. They shape your character. The pain you face alone gives you compassion for others. The tears you cry in secret teach you to comfort those who mourn. You start to realize that every time life tried to break you, God was actually molding you. Every dark night was building a testimony you'll one day use to lift someone else. And when you finally emerge from that season, you'll realize you didn't just survive, you transformed. You learned to walk by faith, not by sight. You learned to listen to God's whispers instead of the world's noise. There's a quiet strength in those who've suffered silently. You can see it in their eyes. That calm, unshakable peace that only comes from walking through fire and finding God in the flames. That kind of strength doesn't come from applause or validation. It comes from endurance. It comes from trusting that even in the shadows, God's hand is still on you. So don't be ashamed of your private struggles. Don't feel weak for fighting battles that no one knows about. You are being refined in the furnace of faith, and when the time is right, your light will shine brighter because it was built in the dark. Let your silence be sacred. Let your struggles remain between you and the God who sees everything. You don't owe the world an explanation for your process. You owe yourself the space to heal, to grow, and to rise. When the time comes, people will see the difference in your peace, your strength, your resilience, and you won't have to say a word. Your transformation will speak for itself. That's what it means to keep your struggles private. It's not secrecy, it's strategy. It's not weakness, it's wisdom. Because the same God who met you in the dark will one day reveal you in the light. There is a quiet kind of faith that does not seek attention. It is the kind of faith that refuses to broadcast its wounds or beg for sympathy. It is the faith that trusts that even in silence, God is listening. Many people lose the strength of their faith, not because they stop believing, but because they start talking too much about what hurts them. The moment you begin to share every detail of your struggle with people who cannot heal you, you weaken the very power that was meant to sustain you. The more you speak, the more you release what God was strengthening within you. Some things are meant to be spoken only in prayer, because not everyone who hears your pain is meant to carry your burden. We often tell ourselves that speaking about our pain helps us heal, and in some cases it does. But when you make your pain public before it's been redeemed, you open the door for voices that were never meant to influence your healing. The enemy doesn't always attack through storms or disasters. Sometimes he attacks through conversations. He listens for what you fear, what you doubt, what you ache for, and he uses those words against you. That is why silence is a form of protection. It is not cowardice, it is spiritual discipline. When you hold your tongue, you guard your faith. When you keep your pain between you and God, you give Him full control of the outcome. There is a sacred power in keeping quiet while you are being tested. When you speak too soon about what you are going through, you allow others to place labels on your situation that God never intended. People might call it a setback, while God calls it a setup. They might see loss, while God sees preparation. They might see failure, while God sees foundation. When you explain too much, you give others permission to define what you're still discovering. But when you stay silent and let God work, you allow His definition to prevail. The less you explain, the more He reveals. Faith does not need witnesses. It does not need likes or approval. Faith thrives in the quiet moments when it's just you and God. When you are sitting in a room alone, talking to Him about things no one else understands, that's where faith grows. That's where your spiritual muscles are built. Because it's easy to talk about trusting God when everything is going well, but it takes real strength to trust Him in silence when everything around you is falling apart. The silence of faith isn't empty, it's full of power. Every word you choose not to speak becomes a declaration of trust. Every secret prayer you whisper, instead of complaining, becomes an act of spiritual maturity. When you choose to stay quiet, it's not because you have nothing to say, it's because you've learned that words can either build or break your faith. The moment you speak fear, you feed fear. The moment you speak doubt, you strengthen doubt. But when you remain still and let your heart speak to God instead of the world, your faith multiplies in ways you cannot see. Sometimes the greatest act of faith is refusing to explain yourself, refusing to defend yourself, and refusing to expose your pain. Because deep down, you know that God is already fighting battles you can't even see. The world teaches us to vent, to share, to post, to talk about everything. But God teaches us to be still, to hold our peace, to trust that even in silence He's working. You see, the more you talk, the more room you leave for doubt to slip in. When you tell too many people what you're struggling with, you invite opinions, fears, and unbelief into your sacred space. People will project their limitations onto your miracle. They'll tell you it's impossible, that it's too late, that it can't be done. But God never asked for their input. He only asked for your trust. Faith does not grow by explaining your struggle. It grows by enduring it. It grows when you keep praying even when you don't see results. It grows when you stop telling the world how hard life is and start telling yourself, God is still in control. It grows when you stop looking for sympathy and start seeking strength. Every time you speak faith instead of frustration, heaven takes notice. Every time you refuse to let your emotions dictate your confession, you win another battle against doubt. You have to learn to talk less about what's wrong and more about what God has promised. The enemy can't read your mind, but he can hear your words. If you constantly speak about how tired, scared, or defeated you feel, he uses that as fuel against you. But when you stay quiet and take those feelings to God in prayer, you rob him of his weapon. You strip his power, because faith-filled silence confuses the enemy. He expects panic, but you give him peace. He expects fear, but you respond with stillness. He expects weakness, but you answer with worship. There's a peace that comes when you stop explaining your pain and start embracing your process. When you no longer feel the need to justify your struggle or make people understand what you're going through, you become unshakable. You stop living for validation and start living for revelation. You realize that your story doesn't need to be told yet, because it's still being written. You start to see that every delay, every disappointment, every heartbreak is shaping your destiny in ways you can't yet understand. And when you truly believe that, you no longer need to talk about your problems. You simply walk through them, knowing that God is already ahead of you. There's a reason Jesus often withdrew to pray alone. He didn't announce his pain to the crowd. He went to the Father in silence. He knew that divine power is born in private communication, not public discussion. If the Son of God needed solitude to maintain his strength, how much more do we? We're not called to broadcast every burden. We're called to bring them to the altar. The world doesn't need to know what you're going through. It needs to see the light that comes from your endurance. When you learn to keep your mouth closed during your darkest moments, you begin to experience something miraculous, the stillness of peace. You stop worrying about what others think, and you start focusing on what God is saying. You realize that silence is not weakness, it's confidence in God's plan. You trust that even when you can't explain it, He's working it for your good. That's the beauty of quiet faith. It doesn't need to make sense to anyone else, because it's not built for anyone else. It's between you and God. So keep your faith sacred. Protect it from the noise. Don't let your mouth undo what your heart is believing. There's power in the words you speak, and even greater power in the words you choose not to say. When you stop talking about your struggles and start trusting God with them, you'll find a new strength rising inside you, a strength that cannot be shaken by gossip, criticism, or doubt. Because when your faith is anchored in silence, your victory is guaranteed in the light. When the storm finally settles and the pain that once kept you awake at night begins to fade, you will realize something powerful. You never needed to prove your struggle to anyone. You never had to convince people of your worth, your pain, or your purpose. When God brings you out, the evidence of His work in your life will speak louder than any explanation ever could. That's why you must let your victory speak for itself. You don't need to announce what God is doing. You don't need to defend your silence or justify your journey. What God is building in you will reveal itself in time, and when it does, those who once doubted you will see that the struggle they mocked was the very soil that produced your strength. There's a sacred beauty in letting your results do the talking. When you stay humble and patient through your trials, your transformation becomes undeniable. The same people who overlooked you, who whispered about your failure, who laughed at your silence, they'll have no choice but to acknowledge your growth when your season of breakthrough arrives. And the best part, you won't have to say a single word. You won't need to explain how you made it, how you kept faith when everything fell apart, or how you smiled through heartbreak. Your peace will tell the story. Your confidence will tell the story. Your blessings will tell the story, because true victory doesn't make noise, it radiates. So often we want to prove ourselves. We want people to know that we've changed, that we've grown, that we've overcome. But sometimes, in our desire to be seen, we interrupt God's timing. He's not just preparing your victory, He's preparing the audience. If He revealed your breakthrough too soon, the people watching wouldn't understand it. They'd credit luck, not the Lord. That's why He keeps you hidden until your season is ready. When the time comes, you won't have to fight for recognition. The doors that used to reject you will open on their own. The people who used to ignore you will seek your advice. The light that once seemed small will suddenly shine, so bright that no explanation is needed. Letting your victory speak for itself means learning to be still when everything in you wants to shout. It means resisting the urge to announce every small success or seek validation for every step forward. It means trusting that the same God who saw your tears will make sure the world sees your triumph. In His time, not yours. You don't need to tell everyone how hard it was. You don't need to relive the pain to prove the lesson. You just have to live with grace, walk with quiet strength. Let your joy become your testimony, because when people see the peace in your life after the chaos you endured, they'll know that it could only have been God. There is something powerful about a person who can endure humiliation, betrayal, or failure and still walk with humility. That's what God honors. He elevates those who keep their hearts pure in private, who never retaliate, who never use bitterness as a weapon. When you hold your peace while the world doubts you, you give God room to fight for you. And when He fights for you, the victory is not just seen, it's undeniable. The people who dismissed you will have to admit that it was grace that carried you. You don't need to clap back. You don't need to expose anyone. The light of your success will expose everything that needs to be revealed. When God elevates you, it's not just about blessing you. It's about showing others what faith can do. You become the living proof of His promises. You become the testimony that others need to keep believing. Every sleepless night, every tear, every season of silence will suddenly make sense, because the pain that was once private becomes the platform for your purpose. You won't have to chase recognition. It will find you. You won't have to explain how you survived. Your life will show it. Your glow will speak of grace. Your peace will declare victory. Your blessings will preach louder than any sermon. Some people will be confused by your transformation. They'll wonder how you managed to rise after so many losses. They'll ask questions, looking for logical explanations, but you'll know the truth. It wasn't luck, it was the Lord. You'll smile and simply say, God did it, because you won't need to justify the journey. The results will make it clear. Those who saw you at your lowest will have to acknowledge the power that lifted you. That's why it's important to let the process unfold without interruption. Don't rush to show the world what God is still perfecting. When the time is right, He will present you in a way that no one can deny. The beauty of silent endurance is that it gives birth to undeniable evidence. When you trust God enough to stay quiet, He rewards you with victories that speak volumes. He turns your private prayers into public praise. He turns your hidden tears into visible triumphs. The people who once doubted your calling will start to see what faith can do when it's held in obedience. And you'll realize that your struggle was never just about you. It was about everyone who needed to witness your comeback. God uses your silence to build credibility for your testimony. Your victory will never need defending. When something is truly blessed by God, it carries a weight that cannot be questioned. The peace that follows His promise cannot be faked. The glow of someone who has been through the fire and found faith on the other side cannot be imitated. That's why it's better to keep quiet and wait for God's perfect unveiling. The world celebrates quick results, but God celebrates refined ones. He wants to bless you in a way that no one can take credit for. That's why your journey takes time. That's why He lets you struggle in silence. Because when the moment finally comes, the magnitude of your victory will make it clear that it was never your strength. It was His grace. There's no need to explain how you got where you are when God is your author. The story He writes for you will speak on its own. The same people who doubted your faith will ask for your prayers. The same voices that mocked your silence will admire your peace. The same hearts that counted you out will witness your rise. But the beautiful thing about divine victory is that it humbles you. It reminds you that you don't win by chance, you win by calling. You win because you trusted Him even when it didn't make sense. You win because you kept your struggles private, your faith loud, and your hope alive. So when the victory finally comes, and it will, let it speak. You don't need to post it, you don't need to prove it, and you don't need to announce it. Just live it. Let your peace be your statement. Let your joy be your explanation. Let your transformation be your answer. Because when God brings you out, the evidence will be too clear to deny. And when that day comes, you'll know that every silent tear, every unspoken prayer, every private battle was worth it. You'll stand in your new season with a heart full of gratitude, and the world will see what grace really looks like when it's given time to bloom. Life will always have its storms, its battles, its moments that test who you really are. But through it all, the lesson is simple and powerful. You don't have to make your pain public to make your purpose real. When you keep your struggles private, you make room for God to do what only He can do. You stop fighting for attention and start fighting for peace. You stop explaining yourself and start trusting His plan. Because the truth is, your strength isn't proven by how loudly you suffer, it's proven by how faithfully you endure in silence. The quiet seasons are not punishment, they are preparation. God does His best work in hidden places. He shapes hearts in the shadows and refines faith in the fire no one sees. So let the world talk, let people assume, let them misunderstand you if they must. You don't owe anyone an explanation for the process that God designed specifically for you. Just stay consistent, stay faithful, and stay quiet enough to hear His voice above all others. When the time comes, He will reveal you. He will bring you into the light in such a way that no one can deny His hand on your life. You won't need to prove anything. Your peace will prove it. Your transformation will prove it. Your blessings will speak louder than any defense you could ever give. Remember this: every tear you cried in private was seen. Every silent prayer was heard, and every lonely night was counted. God never wastes pain, He turns it into power. And when the victory finally arrives, you'll realize that your silence was never weakness, it was worship. You trusted God enough to let Him fight for you, and that's what made you victorious. So hold your peace, keep your faith, and know that your story is far from over. The same God who walked with you in the struggle will walk with you into the celebration. And when that day comes, when the blessing breaks through, stand tall, smile wide, and say these words with gratitude: it was God all along. Because your victory won't need a speech. Your life will be the testimony. Thank you for listening. May you continue to walk in faith, guard your heart, and trust that even in silence, God is speaking. Stay strong, stay faithful, and keep your struggles private. Because one day, your victory will speak for itself. God bless you.